Hello and welcome to Press TV Spotlight. I'm Marzia Hashemi. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, no words can describe what we're witnessing taking place in Gaza, and no one outside of the Strip can really fathom what it is like to be in Gaza and go through this Holocaust. 18 months of sheer madness and hell as billions of people in this dystopian world just watch while Palestinians are being starved to death, buried alive, beheaded, torn to pieces, burned alive, kidnapped and tortured. Just about every other sadistic crime imaginable has been committed against them by this U.S. Zionist genocide. Let's begin tonight's spotlight with some recent footage of Israeli crimes against Palestinians.
يا شباب ابعدوا يا شباب بصحش هيك
حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله
يا رها قومي يلا
سهل عليك الله يسهل عليك يا مصعب سهل عليك يا حبيبتي يا سيليا يا يما يا ستي يا حبيبتي حسبي الله عليهم حسبي الله عليهم
Unbelievable just watching the pain on these people's faces. 18 months of watching this. I'd like to welcome my guests to the program. Mazen Gomsai, Palestinian scientist and author out of Bethlehem. And Fra Hughes, journalist, author, and activist out of Belfast. Well, thank you both for being with me. Let me start this off in Bethlehem. I mean, Mazen, it gets just more and more difficult to talk about this every day. Of course, that's the very least that we can do when our Palestinian brothers and sisters are going through this sheer hell. Obviously, not only in Gaza, but we also were going to get into the West Bank, too. Now, Mazen, the regime targeted in the middle of the night a tent housing journalists that caught a fire and burnt people alive. I mean, what does this mean exactly? People are being targeted who have been displaced, who are living in tents. And why journalists? We have 232 journalists, at least, that have been killed in Gaza since October of 2023. Why?
Well, this is, as you pointed out, this is unprecedented, and it leaves us pretty much speechless. I mean, it's very hard to even convey the level of horror. When you mention the number of journalists killed in about a year and a half or less, that's more journalists than killed in the last wars in the past 100 years combined, combined. Even World War II and World War I, when you add all the journalists killed in them, you wouldn't get that number. And that's journalists alone. And then, of course, medical personnel. And, of course, children. This is targeting children because 50% of the Gaza population is children. And in one incident, 8 of the 15 people killed were children. So this levels of horrors, levels of depravity that the Zionist regime has gone down the road in with the support of Western powers, Western governments, is unprecedented in world history. And really, what can I say? I mean, as I said, it's very hard for me to articulate how frustrated and angry we are at the silence and seeing Netanyahu strut himself in Hungary and now the US right-wing fascist governments that support him.
Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, Mazen talked about the hypocrisy of these Western entities, but what about professional organization? I mean, why isn't there more of an international outcry from professional journalist organizations regarding this targeting of journalists?
Well, I think the immediate answer that comes to mind is whoever pays the piper calls the tune. These professional journalists that you're alluding to, I don't know how professional they are. I thought the idea of journalism was holding truth to power. But what they are bought assets. They are very similar in their construction, and they are very similar in their attitude to the bought assets of the political systems across Western political society. These people who write for The Guardian, The Times, The New York Times, Le Monde, Die Welt, all these different prestigious international journals, they are all paid assets of the people who are their employers. Their employers are just as complicit as the Zionist government in covering up the murders of the innocent people in Gaza, the men, the women, and the children. So when we talk about journalism and we talk about free speech and we talk about holding truth to power, none of this exists. The illusion in the West that we live in a democracy is slowly being worn away by the resilience of the people in Palestine and Yemen and Iran, who show constantly that it is the naked hypocrisy, it is the lies, it is the propaganda. When we think that the first casualty of war is truth, what we're witnessing is a propaganda war by the mainstream media in the West to create the conditions within society here to allow some form of ongoing, almost acceptance of what is happening 4,000 miles away from Britain, God knows how many miles away from America. But while the mainstream media continues to lie, while it continues to defend Israel as if it has a right to murder innocent men, women, and children in self-defense, as it claims, we will continue to have a compliant media leading to a compliant society where people might rail against what's happening, but they're not even, I can guarantee you, I live in the West and we are not shown the truth on a regular basis or a daily basis of what's happening in West Asia. We are constantly being bombarded with propaganda, state narrative, and the Israeli cover of anti-Semitism, where anyone who stands up for the truth and tries to expose these heinous war crimes. There have recently been 8 IOF soldiers who have returned to Britain, who are British nationals, who are walking the streets free. These men should be questioned, arrested, interrogated, and prosecuted for the war crimes in Gaza. But they are walking free, and this is Western society and Western establishment showing its true face to the world.
Yes, indeed. Well, Mazen, earlier atrocities include the targeted killing of 15 medics who were assassinated by the regime. Now, the level of inhumanity is unimaginable, but continually happening on a daily basis. In your perspective, why is the regime so ruthless and targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure as it continues to do?
Well, Zionism from the beginning wanted to obliterate our existence in Palestine. That's a whole game of Zionism. They want the land without the people who come with the land. And even the land, they want to reshape it to fit their own agenda by destroying indigenous trees, olive trees, fig trees, almond trees, etc., and plant European pine trees. They want to make Palestine a European country without its indigenous humans, plants and animals. This is the whole idea of Zionism, This is the whole idea of colonialism, of course, as practiced in what became as Australia or United States. So this is expected from colonialists, and it is also expected, of course, as pointed out by the other guest, that there are resistance to these, resistance actions to these plans of ethnic cleansing, genocide, ecocide, scholasticide, medicide, killing of, trying to destroy. I mean, all the mosques pretty much in Gaza are gone. 3 churches are destroyed, including third oldest church in Palestine. So this is expected. They want to destroy anything that does not fit their vision of a Jewish state, Europeanized Jewish state.
Okay, well, Fra, the Israeli regime is starving people to death, beheading them, burying them alive, and so much more. We've seen people flying in the air due to the velocity of bombs exploding. I mean, when it seems the situation can't get any worse, as I said, in Gaza, then the regime does something even more sadistic. It has been given a free hand. What is its end aim in your perspective? What's the end game for Israel?
Yes, well, what we're witnessing at the moment is hell on earth. It's the only way to describe what's happening on the ground in Gaza and indeed the West Bank. For people who believe in heaven and hell, for people who believe that hell is a place where people will be tortured for eternity. That's what we're witnessing in Gaza. That's what we're witnessing in the West Bank and in Lebanon and in Syria. But the end game is obvious. It is a white European colonial occupation of Palestine. We're witnessing total war. We're witnessing the use of armaments. We're witnessing the use of torture and brutality. We're witnessing the use of the destruction of medical facilities, the infrastructure for the water, the fuel, and using starvation as a method of subjugation against the Palestinian people. The message they're sending is surrender or die, and if they surrender, then expulsion will be next. It is the plan of the colonizer to displace and then replace the indigenous population. So this is a scorched earth policy. What we appear to be witnessing now is that as they move the population around, they send the evacuation orders in order to clear a kind of field of fire, and then they go in and destroy all the buildings. So the end plan, whether or not they succeed is a different matter, is to leave no buildings standing in Gaza, to have the people not even living in tents or porta cabins, but to be surrounded by a military force that is shooting people at will with impunity and with the backing of Europe and the United States of America and Canada. So the end plan is the total extermination or expulsion or extradition of the indigenous population. But we all know it won't end there. They want parts of Egypt, they want Iraq, they want parts of Lebanon, they want to go as far as they can towards Saudi Arabia with Iraq's Greater Israel project. So the Palestinians now are fighting the same fascism that the Russians fought during the Second World War. They're being dehumanized, they're being slaughtered, they're being shot at for fun. The murder of those 15 humanitarian aid workers, as far as I'm aware, that was coordinated with the Israelis, that those ambulances would be allowed into that area to recover the dead and the wounded. That became a trap. Those people were lured in and they were summarily executed, and the autopsies appear to show that their hands were tied behind their backs. They were shot in the head at close range, and it's part of the psychological war that no one is safe in Gaza, no matter what part of civil society you're from. No one is safe anywhere at any time. They will murder the innocent. They will murder those who come initially as the first responders to help save human life, which is a natural human reaction to run towards the aid of others in distress, and then to murder the very people and medics who try to save them, and then murder the doctors in the hospitals who try to save what's left.
Right. Well, Mazen, you're in Bethlehem. You're about 73 kilometers from Gaza. Tell me, what is it like right now for the Palestinians on the West Bank in general? I mean, knowing that it's been over a month that the regime has not allowed any food supplies or aid in, and of course the 18 months that this has been going on. And now, of course, we are seeing increased aggression against the West Bank itself. But to know that you're just 73 kilometers from there and yet basically helpless as far as helping them.
Well, the situation in central Palestine, the West Bank, is unfolding similar to what happened in the Gaza Strip. And it's a slow process, of course, much less intense than what's happening in the Gaza Strip, but nevertheless, it's going on. I mean, just yesterday they killed a 14-year-old Palestinian child who's a dual citizen, actually, a U.S. citizen also, and the U.S. didn't even flinch about that. This is in the West Bank. The destruction of homes continues in the refugee camps. In Bethlehem, where I live, is 3 refugee camps. They are being targeted, Aida, Azza, and Heisha camp. And in the Heisha camp, the largest one, they came in and distributed flyers, basically warning or threatening people that they will do to that refugee camp what they did to the refugee camps in the north of the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, which is complete demolition of these sites. And you can see the pictures on your screen, of course, of what the Israeli military is doing as it destroys homes, as it destroys livelihoods of people, as it impoverishes people in the West Bank. Similar, as I said, to what they had done in Gaza Strip, destroying infrastructure like roads and electricity grids and water supply and so on, but also homes and clinics and other facilities. So it is an unfolding horror that is going to expand to the West Bank at a much larger scale. So how do we feel in the West Bank? We feel, of course, trepidations and anger at the international community for their silence about what happened in Gaza, what is happening in Gaza, and what is happening now increasingly in the West Bank. The loss of our humanity, the loss of international law, basically the ending of the UN as a functioning agency, and the ignorance of International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice rulings.
Well, Fra, do you think that the violence of the regime in the West Bank will backfire on it? I mean, as the attacks and the destruction of Palestinian homes will lead to more people joining the resistance, because basically there's nothing else that they can do, and increase retaliatory operations against the Zionist regime?
Well, we've seen very little retaliatory actions against the regime because the people are very limited. I would imagine I'm sitting safe in my home thousands of miles, and I've been in Gaza in 2010 with George Galloway. I've visited the occupied territories on 3 different occasions. I've been to Aida refugee camp in Bethlehem. I've been to Nabi Sali for the Friday protest. The people are very, very, very limited in their scope. I mean, they're facing the 4th largest army in the world. They have tanks, they have airplanes, they have artilleries, they have armoured vehicles, and they have no conscience, no mercy, and no compassion. This is the people that they're facing. A very small armed resistance, like we've witnessed previously in Jenin, finds it very difficult to stand up against an army which is basically financed, armed, and then rearmed by the American administration. Let's not forget the 600,000 babies that died in Iraq under the sanctions, and then 1 million people murdered in Iraq by America and Britain in their illegal war. It's amazing that the resistance in both Gaza and in the West Bank can do as much as they are actually doing in the face of this murderous onslaught. So all we can do is under international law is to acknowledge the right that people living under occupation have to resist that occupation by any and all means necessary. So from 4,000 miles away, all I can do is watch almost helplessly what's happening on the ground in both Gaza and in the West Bank. And, you know, we're watching this unfold in real time, a genocide on our screens, a genocide on our phones. And our colleague is 100% correct. The impotency of the UN, it's all been shattered. All the illusions of the West talking about, military intervention to protect human rights in Libya when NATO bombed Libya, and the murderous death of Mohammed Gaddafi. So the West is totally complicit in all this. The people in Palestine have the right to resist. It's potentially all they can do, but they're being corralled into smaller and smaller and smaller areas and being surrounded more and more and more by a merciless military onslaught, by people who are supremacists, by people who are racists, and by people who have no value for human life other than their own. If you're not Jewish and you're not a Zionist, they have no respect for the human life of the other, and no respect for the values of anyone who is not of their supremacist.
Right. Well, Mazen, tell me, what's the mindset of the young people that you're around in Bethlehem, in the West Bank right now? I mean, tell me, just give me the vibe, what they're saying.
Well, most young people in the West Bank are, of course, like young people everywhere. They long for a decent life. They long for jobs. They long for having their freedom to move about, to travel even. Most of them are not even allowed to travel 5 kilometers, let's say, from Bethlehem to Jerusalem to visit the holy sites or pray at their holy sites, whether the Christian holy sites or the Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem are off limits to us. So the young people are, of course, frustrated, pained, and angry, and they watch in amazement as the rest of the world, again, chucks these Israeli violations aside, puts them aside, and focuses on selling more weapons to that regime, giving more weapons to that regime, and protecting it from international law. The young people in Palestine, there were demonstrations actually today. Thousands of people were out in the streets, as there was also a strike to basically calling for a stop for this ongoing crimes against humanity. So our people, like those people you also see on your screen, internationals who are acting, our young people are also acting, although we are under more severe restrictions than those younger people in other countries. But of course, that's coming in other countries, repression, as you know, in Europe and the US against young people protesting. Many students also lost their positions at the universities inside the United States for simply speaking out about human rights.
Right, and just I have just about 30 seconds. What message would you want to give to people around the world if they're not involved at all? I mean, what do you see as their responsibility in dealing with this genocide?
Well, people can't get involved in coming out onto the streets, if they can't get involved in civil disobedience, if they can't get involved in trying to prevent arms shipments from leaving the different ports and airports all over Western Europe, then what they must do is BDS. What they must do is boycott, divest, sanction, and they must raise their voices, and they must stand shoulder to shoulder with people being oppressed and murdered in Palestine. So if you can't do anything, join the boycott movement, and try to economically put some pressure on the Zionist apartheid nation state.
And on that note, I thank both of you for being with me. Mazen Qomsaei, Palestinian scientist and author out of Bethlehem. Fra Hughes, journalist, author, and activist out of Belfast. Thank you, viewers, for being with us on another Spotlight. Hope to see you right here next time. Goodbye.